Okay, so this is the second interview, and I have to admit I was uncomfortable with something that came up in the first interview, and then I regretted it because I thought it was probably the most important part of what we talked about. So I really appreciate you giving me a second chance to talk about this whole thing. You mentioned just very, very briefly in the first interview about multi-dimensional beings, and I skipped right by it. So I want to give you a chance to talk about that now.
Okay. Well, where should I start? I don't remember in what context I brought it up.
Well, let's start with how it all began for you. Like when was your first encounter? And that's the first question. The second question is, why do you call them multi-dimensional beings? I've never, that's a new phrase for me.
Okay. Well, my first time, I would call them light beings because I don't know what to call them. I know people, well, they can call it all kinds of things. The first time I got to meet with them was in 1986. And it was when I lived in Los Angeles. And I guess the reason I call them multidimensional beings is because they are physical, but not physical. So my experience was they were speaking to me telepathically. They showed up in my living room. And there was 3 or 4 of them. And I knew them like my family. So it's not like you're appalled or anything. It's not like that. It's like seeing family. And like a vague memory, but you can't remember the whole thing, but you know, and then the sense of humor is tremendous from these beings. So they were speaking, they were much taller than I am. And they had long hair down to here, and they had long fingers, and they were very gracious, but I couldn't make up faces really. It was, they were so filled with light. They did communicate that they were from the 5th density or 5th dimension, something like that. So I was also in a higher energy body. So my physical body was sleeping in the bed. But I was in the living room, exactly what it looked like, where I was at. And my husband then, he worked at night. And so I was there by myself. But it was a real experience. It wasn't like a dream or anything. So that's why it's difficult to talk about or to even, explain to people, because they think it's something unreal. Oh, I just had a dream. No, this is not a dream. This actually happened. So it was the first time, that kind of thing. Of course, I've had dreams and things like that, but not like this. This was a real connection. So they gave some messages of what I'm here to do. I was in a time where I was used to be in the Hollywood modeling and acting and taking film classes and that whole business. I lived in Los Angeles 13 years, and I left that and met my then husband, who was a Native American Indian in his background, and he was very spiritual. And I felt I wanted to leave this whole thing with the film industry because it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I just ended up there by accident. I think I shared that with you. So my real calling in this life is to find the divine or God, or is there a God? And why do you have to believe in him? Shouldn't you know that? Why all this chaos around this word? So living in Sweden, where not many people are spiritual, I was a real true seeker. And so I had left that whole era of working in the television film, and was very happy with my life. I was pregnant at this time also with our son. So I was a few weeks pregnant when this came, when the beings, I can call them the beings, when they came. And so the first thing about it is there's absolutely a very strong recognition and a great sense of humor, lots of joy and love. And the humor is what really got to me the most. And I was like trying to remember, and they thought that was so funny that I had forgotten. You've forgotten? Yeah, well, that's okay. You're supposed to forget. And then they said things like, well, you got the short end of the stick. You got to be the ground crew, so sorry about that. So it's like a light being family, and one of us is down here, and the others are, they're keeping track of me here, or you could say like that, because I've been so-called saved many times in Los Angeles. It's a kind of a rough city to be in, but I've had what you call divine intervention many times, where I was really saved. My life was saved many times. So what I understand now of these multidimensional beings or light beings, and who we are on this planet as a physical beings also, we do have light beings that are around us. And that which we call God or divine, I have discovered. I can only speak from myself. So everyone has to discover this themselves. But through these interactions, it helped me to understand that there is a huge, great, compassionate light that we all are connected into, that we all are awakening into in our own way. And these beings of light, when they arrived the first time, they were giving messages to me of like, don't you remember? It was more kind of a remembering thing. And I received like a diamond or a crystal that was planted in my forehead, like the third eye. And as you see, I usually have this little, it's just a bindi, it's called, because I love India. And in India, they have this little bindi. So it's more like a fashion thing. It's not a piercing. Some people think I pierced my forehead, but I didn't. Maybe it's not even showing, but it's a little thing. I just put on there. And I actually do it because so once you have connected in your inner world through the pineal gland, because that's where they put this diamond or crystal, they placed it inside my pineal gland with their long fingers or something. And it was so much joy, you understand, so much joy that the body could not take it. When it's that kind of a joy, we call it bliss. I didn't even know that. So the body can be so happy that it's a physical sensation. So it seemed to be like a copper thread or something that was guiding into where my son was, just a few weeks old in the uterus. And then the copper thread went out through my mouth. And I was given images that speak, talk to people. I'm an introvert, and I was a huge failure in Hollywood and modeling. I just wish they could pick somebody else. I really didn't want to be there. And I was there to get self-confidence, and just try to get out of my shyness. So when this scenario happened, and I definitely trusted these beings, I knew they were another part of me. That I was clear about. But I realized they got the wrong person. Oh my God. This is the reason I left this whole crazy thing. I cannot speak. I went to voice classes. My manager would send me to expensive voice classes to try to get me to speak. And I just couldn't get to it. And he would call my manager and say, I think maybe get her in some silent movie or something. So, I said, yeah, Greta Garbo, she was in maybe you can be like that. And so I knew that I'm no good at talking. So when they showed telepathic images that speak, you have the light there, just speak. I remember speaking to them, like grabbing onto them, saying, guys, listen, you got the wrong person. I'm so sorry. You went through all this trouble, but you have the wrong person. This is the person here that cannot speak at all. So So sorry, but you gotta stop this, because they were charging the battery, so to speak, of this whole thing. And they laughed. They thought I'm joking. They thought I made the greatest joke. And I said, no, I'm not kidding. I'm really the wrong person for this. Pick somebody who can speak, who's into this, and but I'm so happy to see you. It's just not working. I'm pregnant. I just met my husband, and we're living this life now. So this, so I was trying to communicate, but
Who were you communicating with? The being?
the light beings,
Oh.
yes, the beings. We communicated very naturally, just like you and I speak English now. We communicated telepathically, and I'm always thinking in English, even though I'm Swedish. So as I recall it, I was speaking English telepathically to them. It doesn't matter, because I've met them many times, and it doesn't matter if you are communicating in your own native language or some other language. It's really the feeling, the intention, the truth of it all. You can't fool these beings. I mean, it's who you are that resonates. It's like a frequency. So, yes.
So I guess this is a personal part on my part. So I've had these dreams where I've been approached by these beings, and I wind up just being so afraid, and I can't seem to get past that. But you seem that it seems to be so natural to you. Like, how in the world do you do that? So how do you not be afraid?
That question never even came, so I don't know how to answer that. Because I've met many different beings. I even met some creepy looking being. I guess we're all protected by the light.
Yeah.
And when you are connected to the light somehow, I found out later I probably connected into the light before coming into this. I just told my dad, I'm probably a different child. I just came in, a little different. So I think I was connected to the light somehow. So, and part of what my passion is to help people connect into the light, because then you never have to be afraid. Even when I met these creepy looking characters, that was very funny to me. And there was a pillar of light that came over me as I was meeting these. It's like meeting creeps in Los Angeles, right? I mean, real creepy characters. You're not supposed to walk in a dark alley, which I did for some strange reason. And there's some creepy characters coming. And it was the same experience, meeting the creepy multidimensional, whatever that was. It is a surrender. So you don't even go to fight or flight. It's just a movie, you're just witnessing, you're seeing it. And there's absolutely no fear. There's no frequency of fear. It's a protection of sort. And this is perhaps what I hope that this message or this recording could help people to feel at peace with themselves, because we are all having what in the old days, I'm sure they called them angels around that. We had angels, protective angels. We can call them protective light beings. And if you connect into that great compassionate light, and no matter who you are or who you encounter, there is a protection.
Do you think that you might have been a light being in a previous life?
That's what I have received, the message that from my now teacher that I'm studying with since 20 years back from India. They were giving me through a mystical experience that they have down there, that prior to coming in here, I became one with the great compassionate light in the form of Shiva. So I was a sadhu, and Indian sadhu. That's why I love India. So it is some kind of funny thing that I'm in a Swedish middle-aged woman's body, now, because I have very clear memories of being an old Indian sadhu and finally meeting Shiva in the great divine merging. So I don't know if that is, or I also have memories of being in Egypt and going in the pyramid and doing traveling, and that is connected to this lifetime. So there's some work to be done in the Nordic countries, and I'm just here to do that. I've been traveling the world for the past 16, 18 years, but I'm supposed to be here and do the maybe inner traveling instead, helping people that they can discover this on their own. At least that's my heart's passion, really. It's about connecting to the light and to travel and journey with that. And on that journey, see, I never ask to be, having visions, or definitely not to go into being clairvoyant or anything like that. I have clients that I see, and it's only to help you connect into your own light so that you can get the answers for yourself. I don't go to somebody else to get answers. Even my teachers for 20 years back, they never told me anything. It is to be discovered inside. And that's why I like to keep growing in that direction. As long as I'm breathing, I want to keep growing in my consciousness. And we are not to lean on these interdimensional beings too much. It is more like, and they come usually in an intervention when it's needed.
So is there some specific reason why they're coming now?
Well, let's see. Last time, first, so you asked when the first time I met with them on the real way, that was 1986. And the last time, well, they have come in very interdimensional form, different kinds of forms as of late. But the last time they were real, physical. They were sitting in my bed. It was 2018, in the fall of 2018. And at that time, I was struggling with my body, the health of my body. And I was not properly doing the vegan diet. I was eating fruit and vegetables and just drinking green tea. And I felt fantastic, spiritual, experiences, but my body was getting more and more sick. And so the body started getting swollen, the upper part of my body. And I felt, it's probably because it's time for me to pass over now. So I was just asking by my altar next to the bed, like, you can bring me on, because I've had 2 near-death experiences. I think I shared about that. So that's when I met the same light beings that came out, the same humor. I said, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. Don't you remember? And that was when my daughter was being born. So something with the children, when they're inside the uterus, somehow these beings show up, because this is crucial that you just continue with this and, don't get stuck somewhere. Because see, once you meet this light, you have a different perception of life, and you really don't want to come back into this body again, because it's kind of dense. So in 2018, they came sitting now in the bed, the same light beings, but this time I could almost see their eyes. I mean, different personality, like they were more as physical as they could be. Let me put it that way. And they see, when you meet them, when they're on that high density, your whole body vibration starts going luckily I've gotten used to being in bliss, because that's not something that you can make yourself into. It's nothing that is so funny that you're laughing yourself into bliss. No, it is an intervention with the divine when that happens. And these light beings, when they get physical like that, it's a high experience. There's no room to be afraid. Not when these high beings. You just feel like you just had maybe a bottle of champagne or something. I don't drink, but I can imagine. You just feel, and I had the cat. The cat was lying next to me, just like a big long string, just looking up at me going, what is going on? So it took me a while when they were that physical to get used to it. Because I thought every word they uttered was very hilarious. So they were, I saw they're being patient with me, try to be serious. So then they introduced themselves more properly, because I've just met them in some funny ways or light ways. But they said again that you're the one of us in the physical body. You have to learn the laws of living in a biological body. And then the other was the one sitting over there. She was the little funny one. And she goes, you're not a light being, so don't eat like one. It's this kind of a humor. And then the older one goes, just learn the laws, because your body needs more things than, you can't just drink green teas and eating sattvic fruits, because that's what I thought that would be great, because I'm here for the divine ascension on this planet, however I can help people. So they had to actually come down then and be as physical as they could be. And they put on a YouTube, the doctor that was speaking about health of the body and, proteins and fats and all these things that I wasn't, I kind of skipped that part. So I realized that those of us who are here, we're very much physical, biological beings, and we have to go by the laws that are here. And we are not to necessarily know the mission that we're on. We are to discover that ourselves. That's part of it. But we have these beings of light and our family, so to speak, around us that can always step in and help.
So I know we talked about it after the recording last time, but tell me again about how your husband reacted to all this happening.
Yes, he was working the night shift as security at a hotel, and I called him. This was 1986 then, and I was quite startled, told him the whole thing. And I remember him saying, you just had a bad dream, go back to sleep. And I said, no, this really, he's very spiritual. We could speak about lots of spiritual things together. But this was a little too much for him. So he wasn't really ready to hear the whole scenario. And I contacted another spiritual teacher who was teaching some things that I felt comfortable with. So I asked her, what can I do? And she said, this is fantastic what has happened to you, but if you don't want to have contact with them, then you can just go to the place where you met them and go in all four directions and just put your arms out like this and just say a blessing of gratitude in all four directions and just speak your heart, just saying thank you, but you can't come back here because that's what I said basically. Thanks a lot for coming here. I really appreciate it, but you're scaring my husband, so come back another time when it's a better time to come. And I would say the same thing in all four directions. And I also got such a headache then after this implant of this diamond inside. So I also realized being pregnant, I can't even take an aspirin. So that's another reason, scaring my husband, and the pain is too much in my head. So come back when it's a better time. So, but thanks anyway. Thanks so much. I was very humble. And then we moved back to Sweden in 1993 then. And it was there that I guess they figured, let's see, this is a good time. Of course, between then, I've had many telepathic experiences in the dreams. They're on the ship. And many times we're up on their ship. And they're trying to fix my body because this biological body I came in, it had some defects. And it's always been like my throat chakra or the throat or the tonsils or the neck. And So at one time I was on the ship on this bench, and one of them had their own. They have light arms, you know, and had their own his own like arm down, like, so I was sitting like this, and I woke up and I could hear them saying, "Oh, she's awake," and this this being had his arm down. And I go, "Hey, you know, you can't put an arm down somebody's mouth like that. What are you doing?" And they're laughing, and the whole thing is just funny because I'm also appreciative because I know something got released in the throat. So I've had these kind of experiences off and on, very loving, joyous, fun. But I knew that I could not speak about this to my husband because he just couldn't take that whole thing in. You know, I tried several times, but it's too much. He's also native. He comes from a shaman, native Cherokee Indian. So he's very down to earth. And I really, really appreciated him for being that. And so what happened in 1993 was, as we lived in this apartment and the living room had a glass door to it. So in the middle of the night, he went up and he was to get a glass of water. And this is a big man. He works as security, big man. He got medals because he can stand in the middle of an earthquake, and he's just Mr. Calm. You know, he's calming everybody down and working with the presidents of the United States. He's done all these things because he's so calm. But this man, he came running into the bedroom and he said, and I recently talked to him about this, by the way, so I feel comfortable to share. He's laughing about this now. You know, he's still here in Helsingborg, even though we've been divorced for like 25 years. We are really close friends, soul friends in many ways. But so I could bring this up. I said, "Do you remember this?" "Oh," he's laughing. He said, "I remember. I managed to forget about that." Because he wasn't believing all my sharing about this all these years. So what happened in 1993, when I went up to get the glass of water, he came running back in the bedroom. I've never seen this big man run like that. And he goes, I guess I have to paraphrase now because this is his language. It's like, "Shit, man, there's some tall beings in the living room." He's screaming like that. And I'm like, you know, they're scaring him again. So I got up. I was super calm because I knew who it was. And I said, "Oh." So I got into and I looked in there and I said, "I don't see them." Probably they took off. They go, "Oh no," you know. So I said to him, "You know, these are the beings I've been trying to tell you about, you know, for quite a few years now." And he was like perplexed. And he said, "Well, they shouldn't come in people's living room like that." And then he just walked into that. That was the end of that conversation. But I had, of course, had to go into the living room and the place where he had seen them and go in the forward direction. You know, "Thanks for coming back. I know I told you come back when it's a good time. Obviously, it's not a good time now either. So please come back. But I'm really grateful that you're here." So that was, for me, it was a great confirmation. I knew that it was real. It was a real experience, as real as I'm sitting here. But when somebody else has that confirmation of the same beings, and I know that his next wife that he married, she had similar experience as we met. That she was a photographer of mine. And as we were out photographing, because I'm great friends with my ex-husband, and this woman, she's a wonderful being. And I just shared this about the light beings because she's very spiritual. And she was just silent. And the day after she contacted me, she goes, "I know them too." So she had the same experience with these beings, but she wasn't able to speak about them to anyone. This poor man. So both his wives had these experiences with tall beings.
I think they call it karma. Yeah.
Maybe they tried to give him a message or something, but now he's very fine with it. And he's laughing about it. And So I think nowadays people are not hesitating so much. There's so much, people, even the government of the United States, they seem to acknowledge that there are extraterrestrials, they call them, so maybe this subject is not so far-fetched as it was a few years ago, maybe.
So when you say fifth dimension or multi-dimension, I guess I don't understand what that means exactly.
Mm. The way to most easily explain it is through a little science, I guess. Second dimension is a painting. So if you were to live in a second dimension, if you were a second dimensional being, you would be inside a painting.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody from the third dimension, which we're in, where we also have depth, came to that being in the painting, saying, you're stuck in the second dimension. There's a third dimension also with depth. And they trying to prove it to them by putting an object so there would be depth. Don't you see? But from the second dimension, you would see that just a shadow coming over. They can't perceive that. You don't understand that. But we living in the third dimension, is very clear. There can be a second dimension. There's a third dimension. There's no conflict in that. But if you're on the lower dimension, trying to understand higher dimensions, you can't really fathom it because you don't have any references. So the fourth dimension is, then you also, it's still a third dimension, second dimension, first dimension, but you add time and space. So there seems to be a movement. There seems to be like a linear time. That's how most of us experience life. Like there was a yesterday, there's a now, and there's a future. And there's also space. So we go out in space and we are traveling. And actually science is now coming to understand that time and space has a curve, and there's quantum entanglements and wormholes in the universe. You can actually travel to Mars quicker than in a spaceship. All of these things science is discovering. I'm very interested in that. So I'm always out looking for a scientific explanation of this. So third, fourth dimension, we can kind of understand. Eventually we'll get to the point where time and space don't have the same effect on us. It's still there. We can still play in that reality. But as we go into the fifth dimension, to understand it from the third, fourth dimension, we would experience it more like a dot, like a point. And that point would be the point of love. So there is no other way to experience it from this point of view. And it has no time and space. So that's why we have to make it like that.
Mm-hmm. I know in meditation, I've been meditating, decades. And sometimes in meditation, I reach this point of the sense of timelessness, where it's like there's only this present moment, and that's all there's ever been, is this present moment. And it does create some unusual, dream experiences. But so I can taste that. I'm close enough to it that I can taste that aspect of it. But the fifth dimension seems to be like incomprehensible for me.
And I believe there are many more dimensions than that.
Mm-hmm.
But from the fifth dimension and upwards, there's no duality. Mm-hmm. So that's why fifth dimension is an interesting place to be at.
Right.
Because you can't have fear, because then you can't be there. There are higher fourth dimensional levels where there is fear, there's darkness, there's conflict between right and wrong, good and bad, male and female, these kind of things, the yin and yang. So that is there on higher fourth dimensional experiences. But once you enter into that point of love, there is no duality. So that's what we can call oneness. You awaken into that part that is always still, that is you as an eternal being. And from there on, you can keep traveling and journeying up to, I believe it's up to 11 dimensions or something. I don't know. I just know that from the fifth dimension onwards, there is a transition in consciousness that is quite remarkable, because you have to leave like an old dress, like a coat of fear. You can't bring it there. Mm-hmm. You can't enter into it.
So just for me personally, how would I deal with this fear aspect that I struggle with, because I have these dreams, this being of light comes close, and then I shut down because it's too scary.
Mhm.
So what would you suggest I could do to sort of be more courageous or less afraid?
I would definitely go into the breathing, and I would create a connection with my own higher sacred self so that you always have a protection. Because these beings, Stephen, they actually don't come around us unless our higher sacred self has given green light for it.
Mhm.
So the fact that they are coming around you, your higher sacred self has said, go for it. So maybe they're just like coming and going a little bit like this with you until you can let go of the fear. And the breathing to be just then, if you want to have the contact, you say,
Mhm.
I'm a little afraid, but I would like to have, and I feel protected by divine inside. That's your higher sacred self, the
Mhm.
divine inside you. So you always say, protect me for this. I really would like to meet with this being. And so then you can utilize the breathing and be authentic to say then, I'm feeling afraid, so the body is feeling afraid, so I'm just going to sit and breathe for a while. So please don't move away, because they will immediately, they don't want to scare anybody.
Right.
They'll stay away. But if you then want to have that connection, the best thing you can do is give gratitude. Like, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, thank you, thank you. My body is a little tense, or there might be some things in my body is not. So just bear with me. You can
I
do
think
like
part of it is that for me, my parents exposed me to horror films when I was a child.
that.
And so there was this association with these, aliens is sort of a hostile word. And it has a hostile sort of feeling. And when you see a movie about aliens, there's going to be violence and screaming and all this other stuff. So I think I formed these associations as a child of horror movies and aliens. And so when I meet a creature that I don't understand, I just get frightened
Mm.
automatically. Oh, it's almost like a childlike response.
Yeah. You mentioned in your email that the beings were blue light, or can you describe them?
Well, see, that's the funny thing, because the dreams felt very real. That was one of the things that made dreams different. The first time they were in the dark and I was in the light and I couldn't see them at all. And I don't think, even then I was scared. And they were communicating with me telepathically, and they said, we would like to ask you to be a translator. And but instead of responding rationally, I just screamed and woke up and just thought, said it was a terrible nightmare. But they were persistent. They came back and they said, we would like you to be a translator. This time with no images, with just a voice, and I could handle that. But then I got courageous enough to want to sort of see them, and I sort of went to bed with this intention of wanting to see them. And this being, I could feel this being approaching me from the back. I couldn't see it. And she was going to touch my back, and I screamed and woke up again. So I seem to I have to do baby steps to do this whole thing, because I'm having a difficult time with my automatic fear reaction that I get into.
Yes, it's understandable.
But you don't have that at all. That's what I don't understand. You understand me, but I don't understand you.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Of course, I wouldn't walk down a dark alley in Los Angeles either. So, I mean, maybe there's something, maybe you have a blissful degree of courage, or you're so protected that you feel safe everywhere.
Yeah, it was, I worked as a cocktail waitress at that time. So I was like 2, 3 in the morning, I was going back to the car, and the bartender said, I'll walk you to the car. And I said, no, you don't have to, So it was in West LA somewhere. And that's when I walked, I wouldn't on purpose walk through a dark alley, but coming as, dressed as from work, so the cars pulled up and I was pushed into a corner, and the three big guys came out, and they were definitely going to take a chew out of me, and I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now. So what happened was, one of them, the leader, I actually haven't talked about this. It's a huge divine intervention, but I can speak about it because it could be helpful to know that we do have protection around us. And at the time, I was very much chanting sacred mantras. I went to a group called Siddha Yoga, and I would go there all the time and chanting, and whatever bad karma we have, that would be lessened. So I would go into chanting weekends. I would start Friday and keep going to Sunday. I would do these kind of things. I was doing very much spiritual practices at this time. I worked as a cocktail waitress, but I don't even drink, but it was good money. So the leader then that came out of the car, as they were, rowling themselves up, let's get her. The leader just stood there looking in my eyes. And I remember at that point, I felt completely calm, just knowing this is the end of my life. And this is how it ended, some kind of knowing that I've ended lifetimes after lifetime. So this is the end of this one. So I just was completely just relaxed, just looking him in the eyes. And that must have just startled him or something. And he just looked in the eyes and he said, leave her alone. And the two other guys, they were like, no, man, let's get her. And he's like, no, leave her alone now. And he ran into the car, and the other two guys that were obviously his leader, so they're like, what, and they got into the car and he took off. My heart was pounding. I understood I've been saved. And I ran to the car chanting the mantras. And from then on, I always let the bartender walk me to the car. So I learned the hard way. I always think I can take care of myself. I don't need anybody to protect me. But there is divine protection in us. It still doesn't answer the question, why am I not afraid? Yeah.
To me, you seem to, the first interview, I felt that this is a story of a person who is in a protective bubble somehow.
Yeah.
And you know it, and you feel it, and you have this sense of confidence about it. And even if you met your end, it would not be a terrifying experience. It might be fearful, it might be stressful, but it would not be the level of horror that an average person would experience. That's my feeling I got from you, because you seem to be protected in some way.
Yes. And I think it's that light that we have inside that we can ask to protect us. I did that as a small child, even before I studied and learned more about this compassionate light. And I believe it can be contagious, so that if a person has that protective light, that kind of peace inside, it kind of rubs off on others. Like I've seen my daughter several times, she shares stories of how she was protected, and she's not particularly in the same way I am, but she has her way of having some protective shield, and my son the same. And I speak to our grandchildren now about the same thing. So there's a light inside, and you can just ask for protection, because my grandchild, she was worried about her dad, my son, had fell and hurt his foot. And so we can talk to the light and ask to protect him, and ask a hope that he will heal fast. And that makes total sense. It's kind of the Swedish making sense kind of thing about this. So it's I think that's.
I'm sorry. How did your children adapt to your sort of like your very unusual experiences in life, and your seeing beings and in your meditative life? How did your children adapt to that?
Well, I guess since they don't know any other way, I don't know. Uh, and I know they have said that, both of them have said, we have two very unusual parents. So their father also, coming from the shamanistic Cherokee, he's also, in a very, very different, even though we were only married for 10 years, but we have these two children. And the thing that we raised them in a way that they have to discover their own truth and their own light, that we were very clear about, that we didn't want to influence them. And I'm very, very sure or certain of that way. And I see that has benefited both my son and daughter, that they were always free, and that I'm okay with me being this way. I can only be this way. So they can only be the way they are, and they have to discover that. Like my daughter now, she's 26 now, she's discovering more her native Indian roots and bringing that into the light being things. She has tremendous power in her that she can help people with. But that is something that she is discovering in her own way. And so I never influenced them. This is what I came to conclusion, that a happy person is not a problem to anybody. So I don't think I was a problem. But my son said that it wasn't easy being in the high school. Well, my mom is in television speaking about, the light or whatever. I was on the Swedish television a few times. And he says, you know how difficult it was to go back to school the day after? I said, I'm so sorry. He's laughing about it now, but it was some kind of trauma, I'm sure. Yeah.
So what do you feel your purpose or mission or in life is now?
To help people be happy, to help people release the fear, to feel that security, protection, love, like the Mayan Indians said, when they lived like 1,000 years ago and they just disappeared all of a sudden. They were highly evolved people. And when they said hello to each other, they said, in Lakesh, that means I am another you. So they didn't have that sense of separation. There was a people with highly evolved consciousness. And I'm very interested in ancient civilizations and ancient technology of consciousness. That's why I use sacred mantras, or that which we can call prayers, or communicating with the divine. I speak to the divine every day. Anything I need, that's like I go there first, morning and night. I have my spiritual office, which I am in right now. I have my studio here too. These are all symbols of the divine in here, the light, in different forms, formless, light, the Buddha, the Christ, Shiva, my whole family, the temple, angels, wherever. It is just symbols for me representing this light. So this is God's room. So when the children moved out, God moved in a physical way. And my mission would be to help people discover that for themselves. Maybe they don't want to do it this way. I'm very physical, very practical, down to earth in that sense. I like to go to church and sing the Psalms and of Christianity, or I've even been in a Muslim mosque. I was taken in there. They managed to convince the security that I'm a Muslim and let me in. So there I was, So this is the entrance, probably the light being said, let's just let her in. So I was sitting there with only Muslim people, and I was part of that, and I was just copying them. They were doing some kind of prayers, the women were there, and so super interesting. So that presence is in every sacred place, every religion you can find. So that's why I have a great love for the Indian religion, if you can call it that. The Hindu is more like a lifestyle. They see the many as one,
Mhm.
the one as many different facets of the same diamond. So I have a very clear understanding of religion or non-religion, more scientific that we are in Sweden. It's also interesting to study and to see. So that's all. I wish that now the Nordic people would discover that presence inside them, that it's not just intellectual knowledge, that it could be their experience. That is my mission, if there is one.
Yeah, I had to use the words that I know. There might be other words, but yeah, I have to say, I really learned a lot from the first interview, and it took me a long time to process. It was sort of like, what it's like to live your life if you feel safe.
Mhm.
Like, wow. Because as a mental health counselor, most of the people I would talk to, and I was doing domestic violence counseling, most of the people I was counseling did not feel safe. They woke up afraid. They went to bed afraid. And when I grew up as a kid, because of the violence in my own family, I was afraid all the time. So I think it's something I need to address. That it's not for you to fix. It's just a contrast that's so interesting for me to experience. Somebody who doesn't live with a lot of fear.
I was thinking of a tool that maybe could be used, or it's at least my favorite tool, and that is the sacred sounds.
Yeah.
Because they say the last things that leave your body when you pass over is the sound.
Right.
And so there is the singing of a sacred sounds. It could be mantra of any ancient culture.
Mhm. Yeah.
Of course, I'm in love with the Sanskrit language. So
Right.
if you were to feel fear, or if somebody you're counseling, I wonder if they could just sing some sounds with you, sacred mantras from any culture that you feel drawn to. If that could be of
Yeah.
help.
I use the Om Doom Durgaye Namaha mantra for protection all the
Yes.
time. And that I find that personally helpful. But somehow it doesn't come to mind when a light being is going to touch me in a dream. It's like, okay, it's like.
But if you can have, at least now when we're having talk,
Yeah,
we can introduce the concept that light being is actually another part of you.
right.
So it's not like it's some strange creature coming into your reality. It's actually another part of you. Like the Mayans said, in Lakesh, I'm
Yeah,
another, or
that's true.
Namaste. So if you, at least when you are now in your daily thinking, you can think,
Right.
oh, maybe it's another part of me. So I don't have to be afraid of that bigger part of me. It's more intelligent part of me that wants to connect with me. Or like my daughter, she says, there's a future me that knows things. So I just depend on her. Yeah, she has this kind of ideas that really
Huh.
works, and she can know things before they happen.
Hmm.
Sometimes if something is falling down from a shelf, because I lived with her for 23 years or something when she moved out, she would put out her hand like this and then it would drop.
Huh.
And it's just a reaction, or she would just, she goes, oh, that's the future, Soleil will do that. She would say, I don't worry about that.
So it sounds like you rubbed off on her quite a bit in
Yeah,
some ways.
and somehow she got it in her own way, and
Uh-huh.
but she also had that, what you said, when she was maybe 17, 18, we lived in a rooftop, really cool apartment overlooking the water. But there in this particular place, she had many these higher sacred self experiences that kind of freaked her. And she knew it was another part of her that was just wanting her to travel with her. And she was, she told me about it afterwards. She's like, I am not going out traveling with her. I want to be here. I have work to do. I don't want to do with this. But it's so wonderful. So she was going through a period and I said, you don't have to, if you don't want to see her, the other part, a higher sacred self, or whatever angel it was. And I asked her, were you afraid? And she said, I wasn't afraid. It's just that you know, I don't want to like live two realities. I want to live here. I have my friends, and and I said, you can make a deal. So she has made that deal, actually. She said, you can come around, but only in my dreams. So that's the deal. So she has meeting with them in the dream.
Yeah, that would be a good compromise for me. But yeah, sorry, I'm not trying to make this about myself, but
No,
this.
I think so. Because when I told her about that experience, but her dad got so scared, he ran into the living room, and she told her that whole experience, and she goes, well, yeah, I would also be afraid, There's no wonder he's running in, Mom, no wonder. And yeah, I guess so.
No, it's for me, it's I wanted to have that encounter, but every time I get too close to that encounter, I get freaked about it. So I'll keep working. It's not for you to solve, but it's just an interesting contrast.
I think it's nice before you go to bed, you talk to the light. You can make a habit of it, have like a symbol for the light. I have like a golden ball of light here in my sacred room.
Mm-hmm.
And I just ask for a blessing for the night. And if you want to leave me a message, or if I know something I need to know or learn or grow, I always talk, like I speak, just like I'm talking to you, like that. And I put my hands on it. It's a nice picture, and I have it covered with a cloth, so it's nice to touch it. And I said, I would like a blessing, because I'm just a ground crew here. I know nothing. I'm very, very small in this universe. What do I know? I just know I'm protected, but I'm here to do some work. And I have a great sense that I'm some kind of military. This sounds very odd. I was thinking of that earlier today, going for a walk. I said, I have such a clear sense that I'm a military person. And I heard myself in here laughing. So, well, you sure don't look it. You don't look like a military. I said, but I do feel like one. There must be some past life also, because I'm very disciplined when it comes to, even if I'm tired, it's like, oh, I forgot to go in and say goodnight to the divine and ask for a blessing and just talk. So that military part of me is very helpful then. It's like, get up, go in there, say goodnight. So I always do that. So as of late, since 2018, they have come. There was actually a Swedish angel that came. They come in different forms, not only my light being family, they come in different forms. But they come in between, just like in the knock of dawn, like right before you wake up. That is the frequency of our brain when they are more comfortable, or we can see them maybe. When we're in this talkable brain wave, we might not see them, but when we are in meditative states, they show up. And there was an angel that came from up high, speaking Swedish, and asked for something Sweden. You need to focus on Sweden, and something like that. He was trying to say, and it's like you're seeing a movie that you're in one movie and the other one is in another movie, and you try to communicate and connect. It's that kind of a feeling.
Well, every time I do an interview with you, it's fascinating, and it just leaves me with 1,000 more questions for some future time. But so I'm going to stop the recording now.
Yeah.
And if you can hold on.
Yes, thank you.